During the summer when I was home from college, I worked with a couple of friends as a morning cleaner at the local movie theater. It was fairly new, built in the early 90s, with 3 big screen rooms, 4 mid-sized screens and 3 small screens. My job as morning cleaner was to clean all the screening rooms during a shift that went from 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. It would take me about 20 minutes to get to work from where I lived. The theater was out in an area that was kind of in the middle of nowhere. Before the area was renovated, we were told it was part wetland, farmland, and the rest owned by the local nature center. The first couple of weeks that I worked there, nothing out of the ordinary happened. Typically there would only be 2 or 3 of us working a shift. There was a lot of time spent by yourself, cleaning and listening to your iPod. Occasionally we'd meet up with the day's shift in the morning and give them a breakdown of maintenance issues that we were dealing with and other things they'd like us to look at. One day in particular, my manager asked me if we had noticed the front doors being unlocked when we arrived in the morning. When I said no, the manager went on to tell me that customers, primarily women, were complaining about a tall, lanky man in a suit that had been following them from theater to theater and sometimes into the bathroom. Several times women had come to the front desk, frightened out of their minds, describing a 7-foot-tall man in a black suit, complete with bowler cap, that walked slowly after them. A few times even the police were called. Teenagers that worked the day shift referred to him as the tall man. While he primarily targeted women, occasionally a male co-worker would catch a glimpse of him, sneaking into a theater. On a couple of occasions they would pursue him, thinking it was someone trying to sneak into a movie, only to find nobody there. We had 12 theater rooms total, but Theater 5 was the worst. Nobody wanted to clean out Theater 5. When I first started, I was fairly naive about ghosts and spirits, and I didn't understand why even my boss was apprehensive about Theater 5 and kept assigning me to be the one to clean it out. What made Theater 5 unique was that it sat behind the bathrooms in the lobby, so to get to the sitting area, you had to walk down a long hallway before reaching the screening room. Being that far back, you were the most secluded, especially when it's 4 a.m., and the only other people you're with are on the other side of the building. People cleaning there would complain of nosebleeds, constant headaches, and a feeling of being watched. My first supernatural experience took place here. It was a normal morning. I had just finished sweeping out the lobby, and I was taking care of the cups and other garbage in Theater 5. By routine, you go through and throw away leftover cups and popcorn before vacuuming and sweeping the area. I had my iPod on, and as I was going through throwing cups away, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was behind me. I kept turning around, even at some points taking out my earphones and shouting, "Hello." Of course there was nobody there. Like I said, it was a normal morning, and I had no reason to suspect anything. I went about my routine. About 20 minutes later, I'm at the top back row, sweeping out garbage from under the seats when I hear footsteps. Someone running. I look down, and at the front of the theater, I catch a glimpse of a little blonde-haired boy, turning the corner into the long hallway as he ran out of the theater. Immediately I threw down my broom and chased after him. I ran down the hallway and out into the lobby, but there was no kid. I walked further into the lobby and saw my boss through the front entrance, on a smoke break. Who was that kid? I asked. My boss, Jeff, looked at me. For a moment he was confused, but then he laughed. I'll never forget how casually he said it. "So you met Charlie." Charlie was another thing customers constantly complained about. On several occasions they claimed a little blonde-haired boy was running up and down the aisles in the theater, causing all kinds of noise and ruckus during the movie. Of course, it was in Theater 5. When an usher would come to apprehend the child, he would have already disappeared. The female staff affectionately named him Charlie, after his resemblance to the character in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Charlie was also responsible for knocking several cans of garbage over, throwing papers around, misplacing things, and generally making being a morning cleaner a real pain in the butt. Charlie was more of a nuisance than anything. We used to theorize that he was the son of the tall man, but the two were never seen together. My only encounter with the tall man came a couple weeks after my run-in with Charlie. I had yet to hear about him at this point. Had I known, I most likely would have quit sooner, rather than later. Usually in the morning, if you're the first to arrive, it's your job to walk up into the projector rooms and turn on the lights in all theaters. This is an easy task, except the top floor with the projects has a lot of life-size cutouts of movie characters and massive posters, and in the dark it can be a little creepy. I had done this several times before, and since I was the first to arrive, I go about turning all the lights on. The projector area itself is dark. Typically we'd carry a flashlight with us while going around flipping switches. That morning I couldn't find the flashlight. We'd later find it in the garbage, Charlie's fault. So I walked through the dark hallway of projectors, flipping all the switches. I had stayed up all night prior, watching the Andy Griffith Show. I remember because I was whistling the theme song to myself as I walked down the corridor. Once again I got that feeling of being watched, and something several yards away, in the area with the projectors overlooking the IMAX theater rooms, was staring back at me. I stopped whistling, and tried to focus my eyes. It was a cardboard cutout. They were everywhere, so I kind of dismissed it, and was about to flip the next switch, when the cutout moved. I froze. What I thought was a cutout was actually a figure hunched over. Quietly it was whistling the Andy Griffith theme song, imitating me, only doing it much more slowly. Slowly it rose up from its crouch, revealing itself to be at least 7 feet tall. It was a man. All I could see was a silhouette against the red exit sign lights, and some of the projector computer monitors. It started toward me, whistling quietly. I wanted to move, but for some reason my feet were cemented in the spot, and I had cotton fur tongue. I didn't know what to do. Slowly the tall man stepped toward me. He walked with a bit of a waddle, as if he had a bit of a limp in his left leg. I couldn't exactly tell. He had taken about 3 or 4 steps toward me, when something caught his attention and he turned and walked into an office down the hall. I turned back and ran down the steps and waited outside the theater until my boss and the rest of the crew arrived. I told them what had happened, and they explained that the tall man existed, but he wasn't going to hurt